very much for coming out to the Exchange in beautiful downtown Bloomsburg. Thank you for coming out for storytelling. You are surrounded by dreams. The show that's here right now is on the theme of dreams. When we put the themes out into the world to attract artists here, we say, here's the theme, bring the work, and it's up to the artist to decide how their work meets the theme. We're not picky about that. The only rule here is it has to fit through the front door. After that, everything goes. There's work by 50 artists here, from high school age on up, at least through the 60s, and I think maybe even even a little bit beyond. Some of these people have shown work for decades. Some are showing for the first time or very close to it. Through the artwork that we get here and through stories like this, we are sharing with each other the things that make us us and that make this region itself. Part of the reason we do this, especially in Columbia and Montour counties, it's not a region that has a real identity. When someone says Lancaster County, most people immediately have some picture that pops into their head. Oh, okay, it's where the Amish are out in their buggies. If you say the Poconos, people have some idea of what that means. When you say Columbia Montour, even for people who live here, there's no clear picture. By telling each other our stories, by saying who we are, what we share, that helps build an identity here. It's also key, though, that each one of us has an individual story. We're not only part of a collective, each one of us has something that's important about us. Telling our stories is a way to get that out into the world. It's not just, hey, look at me. By sharing what each one of us has, that will resonate with other people. So, I'm going to start with one of my recurring dreams. This has been going for many, many years. My father handed me a camera when I was 6, more than 50 years ago. And most of what I have photographed is steam trains. I started, of course, in the days of film, when you had to open up the back of the camera, load the film in, and there was the little lever on the back that you moved to advance the film. That also put the spring on the shutter so that when you pressed the button, the shutter would open and you take the picture. As a kid, I didn't always have things right when I was working, and every now and then I would press and nothing would happen because I'd forgotten. The dream that I had for years was of going out, chasing a train, getting somewhere, waiting for the train, lifting the camera, pressing, and nothing happening because I'd forgotten to advance the film. Years went by, I gave up film. I started shooting with a camera that was all digital, all electronic. My dreams kept up with that, so that the dream that I still have every now and then nowadays, I lift up the camera and I press, and the batteries have died. Okay, Marguerite Chamuris, you're up.
Hello, everyone.
You should do this.
No, but you said it, so I want to hear what she said. Never mind, she's here.
I have a set of 3 poems called Dreams, and to me, these represent the faces and phases of dreams. Part 1, Fantasy. Dreams permeate waking hours like sprinkled stones radiating ripples outward, later kissing the shore. Dreams spark somethings that never would have existed or become the smoke of almosts never realized. Some moments are dreams poking through the curtain, revealing a familiar stage and a script that lingers in memory long after waking. Scenes of dreams contain coincidences too good to be true. Locked eyes linking souls are dreams seeping through. Dreams blur the rough edges of reality, the phantasmagoric filter of maybe mixed with memory, and moments half awake leaves a certain wonder in its wake. Part 2, Fear. Dreams can be too much to hold when they start coming true. Seeds started in whimsical fantasy grow a mind of their own, out of control, into winding weeds underneath the bed, unleashing insidious suspicion and dread. Dreams, if ignored, turn to toxic terror or obsessive nightmares invading your brain. Fear is the gatekeeper of untethered ideas, not yet real, and filters the poison unrevealed. It's safe here, under the covers instead, while dreams wait secretly in my head. No need to do anything yet, no need to speak a word, but some come back in a year or two. Dreams much larger than expected bear more fruit than can be digested. Some must fall and rot, nourishing next season's crop. Dreams can be too much to hold, so fear teaches us when to let go. And part 3, fruition. Dreams are reality first conceived, carried and nourished by hopeful mothers who never know the future form of dreams envisioned. Bits collected and formed from endless possibilities, protected and celebrated with anticipation. Bring them forth with faith, because dreams choose you, much like children teach lessons mothers never knew. Born through pain and perseverance, the unbelievable becomes real. One chance in a million, here in flesh and blood. Are you ready? Being prepared is not enough. Expect tests at your weakest, during sleepless nights, for dreams shine light where you were too afraid to look. Fear forces to the surface all the courage that takes to bring fantasy to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marguerite. Okay, next up we have Randy Watts, who is a 1975 Bloomsburg graduate. He is a 2011 member of their Athletic Hall of Fame and an NCAA Division II wrestling champion. And he's going to talk to us about the keys of dreams becoming real.
Oh, we'll see how this goes. Okay. I was planning on doing a little open mic down in Lewisburg, and my schedule didn't work last weekend. And in the same paper that advertised what this is about from the Daily Item, this caught my eye, and I thought, whoa, I think I got something I could share that might work. Because I come over today to see what the situation was, realized it was the emphasis to move it more towards art, but art is in many, many ways of different things. But I felt that, particularly from the article, that two things I wanted to accomplish. And one was that I sensed that there might be someone by my being here today that I might touch, and that's in the hopes, if not, or even just one person, then my time was worthy to be here. And second, it's been almost 50 years since I graduated from here, and I thought, oh, how many things I have given back to my college. So here I am in hopes that that might be accomplished, okay? So the first thing I had was reflect upon, from my high school years, what I was about, even pre-high school. I can recall in 5th grade, my teacher at that time saying, Watts, and I didn't introduce who I was. We did, but I'm Randy Watts. And he said, Watts, you're worth about as much as a bump on a log. Okay, and at that time, with the laughter of the class, he was very, very true in what he was saying. And I had very low self-esteem, no guidance or direction. I had a lovely home and parents, but I took it upon myself to continue to pursue life in a way that maybe something would be more than just a bump on a log. I recall in 8th grade that kind of happens through the media or the opportunity through sports. You know, I was a small little farm boy who discovered the sport of wrestling, and through it, the concept of dreams definitely started falling in place, particularly when you start to think of what happens within your mind when you start to think long-term and in long range in regard to what you're trying to accomplish or get accomplished. So at that point in 8th grade, I focused ahead through the encouragement of the coach to my 9th grade year. And of course, things fell in place within the what sports became for me, particularly with wrestling. My junior year, having advanced quite well in the sport, I had an outstanding season. The season ended, which at that time, being back in the 1960s, when you lose, that's it, postseason. And so, but what I had accomplished showed me the potential that I could possibly be a state champion next year. The next year, as my being my senior year, I won every meet all season long. Postseason, all of a sudden, boom, reversal, and that dream was done. So the road of my dream, which at that point seemed gone, took a different direction, and we had to mention the word Lancaster County. Somehow I ended up at Stevens Trade School, and through Stevens Trade, I ended up at Bloomsburg University. So it took some time to fulfill that. There were other obstacles along the way. One was not being college prepped, and that's why I had to go through Stevens Trade, and multiple other things that had to come to be to get me to be eventually a teacher, a career teacher, and again, the NCAA champion that I was able to do through that. The keys to what I felt my success were this. One is to be able to, what the mind has to be a part of what you're trying to accomplish. That's where we have the dream concept here, the brain, the phenomenal, what the brain can be about, amazing what that organ is all about. And then number two, how it connects with the body and how that has to be between those dots to make it come together. And my biggest thing that I want to kind of stress today, and it took me a large part of my life to eventually get to my senior year at Bloomsburg University, where I put a third dimension to that whole thing, mind, body, and something much deeper. And to me, it became that of a faith. And when I was able to connect those things together in such a way, all of a sudden, it all was working. And it's been kind of my life's walk ever since. As I reflect back and as I continue to achieve and work towards other dreams. I was fascinated just recently upon this particular man that I just read within the last week about, Dr. Ben Carson. And I could challenge you that if you want to kind of know some of the thinking that goes on in my head of what the success is in making dreams come true, read his story. Very much parallels to what I was able to be about. I think back of some of my more recent accomplishments and how the same path that I chose or was able to find to become a college graduate at Bloomsburg University, that one of them was to climb mountains. I've been on top of many mountains, particularly in the west part of the United States. My first mountain that I climbed at the age of 65 was Mount Hood, which is right there at Portland, Oregon. And but I also did Mount St. Helens, the Three Sisters. And just 2 years ago, I climbed the mountain, Mount Whitney, which is the highest mountain in the lower United States. And what has to happen in order to some of these mountain climbing experiences, which Mount Whitney is 14,505, is definitely a thing of the mind, in a dream, to see yourself at some point at the top, and then the physical part, and then for me, it's a spiritual walk. And it's just neat when you're able to do something like that, reach the summit, and all that must happen in between to make that possible. In the case of the West, we do a tremendous amount of switchbacks to go up the mountain, as many as 100 at times. And but the process, the achievement was there. And I'm going to kind of end this with this thinking. Particularly, this is where I give credit to much of my achievements of dreams coming true. And this is kind of, I wasn't sure about what maybe doing this tonight, but I'm going to do it, and this is the way it's going to end. It'll be this. I stood on top of Mount Whitney, again, 2 years ago, and I had an audience of about 20 people. And I talked about, at that time, the beauty of creation and the fascination within my mind and ability to be able to get to the top of that mountain. And I sang this song. O Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made, I've seen the stars, I've heard the roaring thunder, thy power throughout the universe display. When I look down from lofty mountain grandeur and heard the birds and felt the gentle breeze, then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Okay.
The next person to share, another new person here at the Exchange, so welcome to the Exchange family. Bob Walz has a PhD in English and from Lehigh University, and he is going to read 6 poems touching on dreams.
Yes, and I should mention, it might sound a little corny, but this whole evening is a dream for me. I write poetry. It's mainly for myself, but I have been looking for a way to express it to others. And this is the first opportunity for quite a while that I have had an audience. A little shameless self-promotion here. I do have a poetry blog. And if any of these poems appeal to you, you might want to go to the blog. You would just have to Google Robert Walz, W-A-L-Z, poetry blog, and you should get a link to it. The first poem I'm going to read, I've titled Sky Sharks. It is surreal and a bit of a nightmare. And it was indeed a dream I had. It was one of those moments when you wake up and you say, boy, I have to commit that to paper. So here it is, Sky Sharks. I see her in her dark green glory, in a water bowl of glass. Her willows are well weeping. A small white-tipped brook babbles past. Flashbugs and stars click on and off. Thousands of sky sharks are out this night, chasing and gobbling up minnow-like sparrows that swallow the red insects swimming in midair, that eat the green fungus and algae, and full iridescent plumage birds, the beautiful colors of the eternal chase. Rocket and careen all over, dashing their heads haphazard on the rocks while hunting vipers for their lives. Here all life devours all life with pleasure, but as a vision slowly fades to a dry fact side, a beautiful seductress with piercing blue eyes wakes me with a start as she seizes and penetrates my soul and consumes my clenched and hidden heart. The second poem is called Poetry. It dawned on me a couple of years ago. It was one of those slap your forehead moments when I said, poetry? Oh my God. I've been looking at this pun my whole life. Okay, let's write a poem about a poetry. My poetry grows throughout me, branches up into my arms and head from a trunk of heartwood that splits and shoots roots down my legs and feet. These gnarly roots twist through dreamy underworld, burrowing by night until meeting the nether sky, where the sun rises and veiny fruit finally falls and sprouts into another tree without. A whole world grows from this single fallen seed as stars dangle together from the tree, hanging from the twigs of my outstretched fingers by stems of love holding eternity. This third poem is somewhat of a dark poem. I like it because of its psychology of sorts. It is dark, and hence I titled it Darkness. Little jade Buddha, statue on my night table, carved from hard, cold stone, drawing next to my heart and soul. You sit so unemotional that ages have not changed your visage. Were you there when Annie died? Was that you who so cried? Ages have not changed your stance. I so envied. Little jade Buddha, only in dreams are you able to move away from stone and whisper the woes of your heart and soul. Yet ages have not changed your visage. It remains so unemotional. Buddha has your dead heart, withdrawn so far through time, that it is stiller than your stance and buried as deep as mine. This next poem is, again, in part about dreaming. It's also about creating. And it's called When the Sky Thunders with My Dreams. When my shut-shell heart swallows the jagged world, the sky will thunder with my dreams, and over craggy mountains, surging clouds will breathe in a braiding breeze. Then, as he walks out of my fractured home of memory, And through the placeless town, the stumbling, befuddled boy, his self-searching eyes seeing only hollowness, will find his inspiration by filling the wordless space, placing a stone base where his words may stand to last. He will be held softly by the curve of his building vision and will find his way down the stone path, wandering inevitably under the pines, and will dive in the original water of the primordial lake. His world will be hidden here, protected here, in a serenity that cradles his dreams and washes over the snarled and confused avenues, inflaming the driven flesh of youth. And we will go there, whispering and enfolding his world within the secret home submerged in our heart. And slowly caressed by the soft sounds of lapping waves, our pain will turn shiny, smooth, and round, and we will skip it across our reflections that break and blend, to sink softly where a youthful diver of cloudy depths may one day prize the pulsing gleam, illuminating the dark entanglements like a lustrous gem. This next poem, ironically, and maybe wish-fulfilling, is called Spring, which is, I'm sure, right around the corner. Today I wake to work, on work from which I work to get away, one step closer to the hungry grave. And I thrust down pale, doubled over embryos, tucking the bulbs in the red blanketing clay. Down into the slow churning earth, I plant these small, silky skinned mummies in the deathbed silence. And above my own musing, I hear singing out love's lyrical eloquence from the soul of the underworld through the trumpets of the daffodils. And from these roots of budding word and thought, in starry skies of dirt and rock, the ripened fruit will fall, whispering the ecstatic truth from which I shall spin a web, an intricately rich fabric to catch the glimmer of love shining from the eye of the blooming iris and lily. And before the bitter seed rots, I shall water with a feeding spring and grow this garden with the blood of my being into an image of the heart, always weaving sky and earth, life and death, until it enwraps our lives with a leaf-weaved shroud sheet to protect us from time's lie, laying a thick and lush fabric of green, hushing the wheels, battlefields, and butterflies above the seed of sleep wherein we lie, dream buried, dream deep. We sleep under the silk of life and only awake in dreams. The grave is our shape, decay our growth. Ours is an eternal wait to rise into the clouds and rains, floating silently toward the frozen sun until we freeze to ashes in its fiery ice, never having followed the profundity of the body and the deep flow of its direction. Such is the blinding light of night pitched over this breathing shroud sheet, that we do not feel the world move as a silent river, secretly flowing under our feet. And upon this day I shall plant and reap this work wilting toward death, and hold it close and dear, and allow myself to sleep. As I wake the world to my dream, undermining the veil of lies of the sleep-walking workaday world, and laying bare the truth below the shifting sands of the real. Down in the elemental garden, where creating creates creation, this night I meet Persephone, dark queen, whose radiant eyes and rose lips quicken the pulse and warm the blood, and I will unfold and embrace her in my heart until she drops her glowing golden autumn gown. Then all of our days shall rain down, leaving her blushing and naked, like a sweet rose-cheeked maiden, blossoming throughout the endless night, and exploding the decaying fruit of death, leaving flesh and dust to meld in the pulsing womb of clay. Its throbbing veins growing in a final lightning burst as they root silently while unfolding petals joyfully cradle the wailing earth. And this last one is called Dark Recognition. He ties his boots with triple knot and pulls his hat hard down upon his head. All he has is an old army cot and tattered tarp above his moldy bed. He keeps only what he must. The rest is given to those he knows not. And at night he lies down in his dark dread, on moonless fields where endless battles are fought. And in the only place that he is kept, he trudges through the victories and his part, and dreams along with the other dead, where he sees himself in the enemy's heart. And that would about do it.
Thank you very much, Bob. You took us many different places, a huge range.
Yep, thanks.
The next person to share dreams has had artwork on the walls here, has also shared a story here in the past. So welcome back to the exchange, Sheila Dignazio, to talk about dreaming in languages.
Before I get started, does anybody here speak any other languages? Anybody? Okay. Anybody have Duolingo on their phones? Okay, now I see some more hands coming up. Okay, so I've always liked languages. I've always been keenly interested in languages. My main goal in life when I was a kid was to travel and become a polyglot. It didn't matter which languages or how I did it, that was just the plan. And I grew up in West Hazelton, Pennsylvania. It's a lot of factory jobs and, built on a mining community. So people would say to me when I was a kid, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I just want to travel and see the world and speak languages. And to quote our German grandmother, the response was more along the lines of, that's nice, honey. It wasn't actually really like supporting, having a plan like that. As a kid, I used to save up my allowance and go to the local mall's Walden Books, and I would buy foreign language dictionaries and phrase books. I borrowed a few archaic things from our public library. I remember a book in Russian from the 1950s probably, and I don't know how to speak or read or write Russian, but that was really exciting to me. I used to borrow record albums. Luckily, I had a record player at home. I had an 8-track player. If I could have found anything, I would have used that as well. So back then, whatever dreams I remember having tended to be more sensory than language-based. A lot of them, I had a lot of dreams where I couldn't open my eyes or my vision was really dimmed. It's the same way when you're outdoors on a bright sunny day and then you don't have your sunglasses on and you go indoors and the light is just too much, you can't see. So a lot of my dreams I remember from when I was a kid were like that. So to navigate in those dreams, I had to either use sound or touch to find my way around. And I don't remember really a lot of talking in the dreams. Maybe it was more sounds for the navigation than hearing people talking. I occasionally had dreams in which I was walking and about to step up, but instead I would trip over a curb and then I'd actually kick myself awake in real life. So those were the ones I remember. Excuse me. In junior high, they started offering us language classes at school. And by the time I graduated high school, I had taken a little bit of Spanish, a little bit of French, a few years of German, and our public library had American Sign Language classes, so I did those in my free time for fun. They had free classes there. And by the time I graduated from college, I decided to get a TESOL certificate, teaching English to speakers of other languages, and get a job as a teacher, and that was how I was going to travel the world and start really learning all these languages that I wanted to learn. Also along the way, I found some really interesting books, and the titles of the books were as fascinating to me as the subject matter, such as Dreaming in Chinese, Mandarin Lessons in Life, Love, and Language by Deborah Fallows, and Dreaming in Hindi, Coming Awake in Another Language by Catherine Russell Rich. So, I found books like that, and they were just really interesting to me, and it was kind of along the lines of what I wanted to do. These were written by women that had come from the United States or from an English-speaking country and then went somewhere else to learn another language. So I'll talk about some of these dreams that I've had in other languages. The first one that I remember having, where I had a dream that was in a language other than English, was when I was living in Thailand. And in the dream, my youngest sister, my dad, and I were all sitting around and speaking in Korean, which I had lived in Korea before I moved to Thailand. And that just really struck me because I only speak Korean at a basic level, and my dad and my sister don't speak Korean unless there's something they've not been telling me all these years. So that was the first one I remember having. I visited India. I was in Kolkata. That's also when I lived in Thailand. I had a 3-week vacation. And for the whole 3 weeks that I was there, I was dreaming in Bengali. I just remember hearing the language all around me, and I was so fascinated, and it was so interesting, and I had always wanted to go to India, so I'd go to sleep and dream I was walking around and dream I would hear people talking. In actuality, I do not speak Bengali or Hindi, two common languages in the region that I was in. I did pick up a few, couple odds and ends, like daily pleasantries from talking to people. And I also had an impromptu lesson in how to swear in Bengali, which I learned from a guy who looked like an Indian Frank Zappa, which was oddly appropriately enough for that. And I would also like to add that the lesson was his idea, not my idea. But I still remember some of the things that I picked up from him. A few years later, I moved to Saudi Arabia and I started learning Arabic. And that's kind of like really where my passion in languages is now, is in Arabic. I love Arabic language. I spent so much time trying to read books in Arabic that I would actually have dreams that I was just sitting there reading copies of books in Arabic. And in the dream, I could see what I'm reading. I can tell you what I'm reading. And it just all makes sense to me in the dream. And also when I was in Saudi, I got to travel to Germany a few times to meet relatives. And when my sisters and I were little, our grandmother came from Germany, which you may have picked up from the accent when I mentioned my Oma before. She didn't want to teach me German, but again, I went out to the trusty Walden books, picked up a few German phrase books and sat her down and was like, can we do this, please? And then she started teaching me. And we also had a neighbor, and she grew up in a German-speaking family, so she would have my sisters and me memorize phrases in German, especially around the holidays. We could not get our Christmas presents until we learned how to say things like Fröhliche Weihnachten, run back across the street, go tell our Oma what she said, then Oma would say something, we had to go back, tell the neighbor, and only then, when everything was correct, could we collect our Christmas presents. Sometimes, the dreams are like really kind of off the wall to me, like dreaming in Bengali, because I don't actually speak the language. Other ones are kind of oddly a little bit more true to life for a dream. I guess it was about a year or two ago, I dreamed that my younger sister and I were hiking. This was in Pennsylvania, and we met a group of Lebanese campers. And my sister does not speak Lebanese dialect, so she doesn't speak it in waking life. So when she was talking to the campers or me, she was talking in English. But because I speak Lebanese, I was talking to the campers in Arabic. So I had a bilingual dream, so I thought that was pretty cool too. Since I began traveling, I noticed that not only have the mood of my dreams changed, I no longer really seem to have like the impeded vision ones that I used to have when I was a kid, but the landscape has also changed. So I frequently dream of places that are like a mashup of countries or cities that I've lived in or that I've visited. An example is like I'll be walking in West Hazelton, Pennsylvania, which is where my sister and I grew up, and you just walk across the street into Seoul, South Korea, and it's all there in one place. I've had dreams where I was strolling kind of the woven together city streets of Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and Berlin simultaneously, just kind of cross from one country into the other, back into the other again. And actually, just a few days ago, in my sleep, I was dreaming that I was exploring Vientiane, Laos, which is a place I had to go a few times for visa processing. But apparently they decided to host the Bloomsburg Fair. So the Bloomsburg Fairgrounds were in Southeast Asia, and somehow it was populated mostly by foreign backpackers who had been teleported from Khao San Road in Bangkok, Thailand. So that was a little bit interesting to me. Sometimes when I read about that, or I'm reading these books with the dreaming in whatever the language is, or I talk to people, a question comes up of whether or not dreaming in a language indicates fluency. I honestly don't know, even saying I don't speak Bengali, but I've had dreams in it. I just think it's a receptiveness to languages and being interested in languages, at least on my part. I'd say, it doesn't necessarily have to be anything to do with fluency or fluidity in a language, but I did find that most of the time I tend to dream in languages that I've not only studied, but that I've interacted with others in, even if it's only on a basic level. So for example, I did mention Duolingo earlier. I have Duolingo on my phone. I do Turkish lessons every day. I'm waiting to have a dream in Turkish. It hasn't happened yet. Spanish is one of the first languages that I started learning, but because of going to live in Southeast Asia and live in East Asia and live in the Middle East, I didn't really keep up with it. So it's quite rusty now that I'm back here, even though I've been here for a little while. But Spanish is another one I've had a lot of exposure to throughout my life, and I've used it to talk to people. I don't think I've ever actually had a dream in Spanish. So I'm hoping someday, these languages might come up when I'm sleeping. That would be awesome if they would do that. They might actually say to me, fil mishmish, which I learned in Qatar is Qatari Arabic for the literal translation means in the apricots. But what it actually means, it's more so akin to when somebody tells you something in English and you just look at them and say, in your dreams. So if that's the case, I'll be waiting for Turkish, Spanish, and whichever other languages want to come in and say hi. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Sheila. That was wonderful. Again, we traveled around the whole world and came right back to the Bloomsburg Fair. It's all right here. Our last sharer tonight is someone who has work on the walls in the gallery right now, and I encourage all of you who are here, before you leave, that side, in that front corner of the gallery, is a lot of work by Karen Rose. It's only the second time she's shown work here, but came in with a big pile of stuff and handed it to me and said, I don't know how you're going to hang this, but you'll figure it out. And I did, and I'm glad I did. It's wonderful work. Karen is going to share with us about how a dream comes true.
Actually, my dream in my life was, what?
Let me get out of the way.
Oh, great, okay. Was to be an artist. Am I really an artist? So, since I was like me, probably in junior high, I would always journal, but it was words and la la la. And I would even write down things I ate. So sometimes I wonder, maybe I had an eating disorder. But I really liked the food, and I would describe, anyway. So then over time, I thought, this is sort of boring, just to write words. And so then I was either paint over it, and then eventually I just stopped using the words and just did art. So one of the artists that I worked with was somebody who just did intuitive drawing. So I never learned anything like this is how you draw an apple. Like realism, I'm not good at it at all. But usually it's about the feeling place. And so one of the women did teach this, it was intuitive drawing, and she would start off where you took a piece of paper, and maybe with yellow, and you would draw a few lines, and then you would switch it. You'd draw a lot more, and you'd switch it. And then around the fourth time, you'd say, what do I see that comes out? And it was very cool. There were all sorts of things, but I had no idea what it was going to be when I started, which was really cool. And then another woman I worked with, she's Pamela Underwood. She lives in San Diego, then she moved to Austin, but she did this body writing, and it was something that she had learned, sort of discovered this kind of technique in her own work. And so she will take groups of women, and then you're going to put paint on your body in the way that you want it to come out. So like first you'll just put Vaseline and you'll lie on a newsprint. So you say, do I want my hip or whatever? So you put the Vaseline where you want it, and then your teammates, your other women, help you get down where you don't have all the paint slide all over. So you do it first with Vaseline to see what it's going to look like, and then what do you have to do when you finally put the paint on so you don't just smear it all over. So I actually worked with this woman probably 4 different times, and I think, let's see, well, I know 2 of them. Yeah, it's probably the first one I ever did with her, and then the last one I ever did with her. And okay, so the last one, the first one probably is the one, as you walk in, it's hanging freestanding, and it's all in different panels. When I did it, I think, yeah, it's my body like this. And so, it's fine. Okay. So after I'd done it, then I said, this is too big, and I don't know what else to do with it. She said, well, what about, because I was journaling in journals that were probably, 12 by 16 or something. She said, well, what if we tear up the canvas? And I said, whoa. And so that's what I did. I tore it, and so now it's in 12 panels. And I liked it because then I could reverse the panels, and like if I could write on the back if I wanted. And some of them have nothing on them, and I just think that's cool. So yes, that was probably one of the first ones I did, and it was very exciting. And again, you do it over a long weekend or 4 days. So it's all women, and it's obviously it becomes very personal because you're half naked sometimes, and clearly people have had a reason that something was important. They want, like one woman had breast reconstruction surgery, so that there was a reason somebody was choosing this activity. But the artist is also an art therapist, so she could take the group into pretty meaningful, cool things and cool ways. And then the last one I did with her is the one that's it's the one that's surrounded by the lights. And actually, I've only lived here about less than 3 years. I moved from Los Angeles area, and I came here, and part of me was going, what did I do coming here? My daughter lives here, but it was a big adjustment. And I did have a dream at that time that I would come, and in the winter, I would go to warm climates. And then I came, and there was a pandemic, and so I didn't know anybody, and I didn't meet anybody, and I didn't go to warm climate. But actually, next month, the 21st of February, I am going to go to live in Mexico for a year. So I did, and I actually had been to Panama, so I did take my dream and jumping off. So why that's exciting to me is that one I did was I lived here in Pennsylvania, and I went to Austin, where this woman has a gorgeous studio and house and everything. And because when I first came here, I could completely walk up the hill. I would go up to the school with my dog, I would turn around and come back. Like, da-da-da-da-da. Well, somewhere along the way, other things that I didn't know about happened, and I have this neuropathy, which means my balance is really off. So now I don't really like that very much. I do have a rolling walker, which means I can take my dog and we still go, but she's sort of old and lazy. She's happy to stay home too. But anyway, so when I went to this last body writing workshop with my friend, I thought I want to do something that is talking about, there's something about my legs because I'm going to be going into life differently. So I said, I want something that feels like I'm diving off. So that's what those series back there is, a profile of me diving. And again, to get down that way, you have to people help you because I couldn't lay down on my side without completely smearing it. But anyway, people helped me. So that's what the series of them. And then I took the same profile and did it backwards. So then I had myself looking at myself, and then I had the idea that I would take a bunch of those different shapes and put them all over in metallic prints and so forth. So I really like it because it really is about, I'm diving off to the next part of my life, and even though I'm not walking the way I initially decided, I am going to go, and it's on the Yucatan Peninsula where the water is really, really warm, really, really clear. I've been to that area many times. I just love it. So my dream of being an artist is I'm actually able to play out here. And also in Los Angeles, I wouldn't have had the nerve to do this. Like, it took something pretty small and safe. Like I said, I have never shown anybody else. I mean, I do in my workshops, but I just don't show people because it's very personal. So that part of Bloomsburg's appeal to me is that it was small and safe. And it turned out that it's right before I go, I thought, well, I can do the dreams now because I'm also leaving. But that's another part of the dream, is to go out and see the world, no matter what my body says. And the other thing about Cancun, or the area south of Cancun, is the waves are not big. Because if the waves are big, I can't get in the water. But I take my cane, that's a metallic cane, and I put it on my wrist. And so if small waves I can get into, and then if they're really bad on the way out, I turn around on my butt. And I just sort of push myself up on the shore. And then I can say to somebody, oh, would you help me up? So I figure no matter what, I'm going to Mexico, I'm going to swim in the water and have my dreams come true. So that's it. So yes, thank you. So that's, my work is in that back corner there. So thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you.
It's a pleasure to know that our town, this space, is a safe one for people to share in. This brings us to the end of this storytelling session. We want to do many more of these. There are undoubtedly shows here that the theme will somehow spark people to tell their stories, but we're also eager for all of you to go out in the world, think about what other stories you would like to tell, what aspects of your life you have to share, and tell your friends that this opportunity exists, and come back suggesting themes that we can do this going ahead. It doesn't always have to be about the work that's on the wall. There could be some other theme of stories that will work here. So I will let you go off and think about that, tell the world, and sweet dreams.